We've talked a lot about the longevity benefits of strength training. It increases bone density, improves insulin sensitivity, and body composition. I've tried many different types of strength training: barbells, kettlebells, calisthenics, and resistance bands. But one of the most interesting of all of them is blood flow restriction training, or BFR training. Many athletes at the 2021 Tokyo Olympics were seen to use this form of training. It's also called occlusion training, where blood flow is restricted to the working limbs with specific wraparound bands. This creates partial blood flow restriction. Sounds terrifying, but don't worry, it's not a medical tourniquet. BFR only creates partial inflow into the muscle and restricts venous outflow. As a result, blood begins to pool up in the limb, which has been seen to promote muscle hypertrophy, recovery, and prevent muscle atrophy. In the rest of this video, I'm going to share with you the amazing new research about BFR training and how you can use it to build muscle and slow down muscle loss with age. So make sure you click a like and subscribe for future videos about living longer and staying healthier. There are studies finding that BFR training is able to prevent muscle atrophy in people who are at bed rest or immobilized. This makes BFR training a very promising training method for recovering from injuries or preventing muscle wasting. Even just 10 days of bed rest in both healthy adults and the elderly may result in up to 3 to 5% of lean muscle loss and 15 to 23% of muscle strength loss after just 10 days of bed rest. By using BFR training, you're able to stimulate the muscles to prevent atrophy. But that's not the crazy part of blood flow restriction training. BFR is able to promote muscle growth without overloading the joints or the nervous system. When traditional strength training utilizes 60 to 80% of a 1 rep max to stimulate hypertrophy, then BFR has been seen to be able to do that at only 20 to 30%. If there ever is like a hack for building muscle, then I think that's the closest one you can ever get. You're basically tricking your body into thinking that it's lifting heavier weights than it actually is. What's more, BFR causes significantly less muscle damage than traditional weightlifting because the intensities are much lower. So you're able to build muscle and strength with lighter loads and without causing damage to the joints. I've already been using BFR for the last several years, but I've always done it for the sake of recovery. However, there was a 2023 meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials that changed my perspective on BFR training completely and made me realize its true potential. A meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials is one of the highest quality of evidence, which is why I think this particular study is so interesting. They found that low-load BFR can be equally as effective as high-load resistance training for increasing muscle strength in the upper body muscles. And not only the muscles being trained, but also the proximal muscles. This had always been the limiting factor for BFR in my opinion, because if you wear the bands around your arms or your legs, then you're not targeting all the muscles. Like, you're not training the shoulders or your back or your chest muscles directly because the bands are only around your arms, so you're targeting mostly like the biceps and triceps with that. However, this meta-analysis found that even if you're wearing BFR bands around your arms, you can increase your muscle strength even in the proximal muscles, such as the shoulders, back, and chest. This is kind of a paradigm shift for me at least, because it means that you're able to build upper body strength even in the muscles that aren't necessarily, cuffed with the BFR bands. You can still increase your muscle strength in your chest and your shoulders by using the BFR bands around your arms because of this proximal effect. It's especially impressive given the fact that you don't have to use heavier weights. When I'm at the gym, I'm lifting hundreds of pounds of weight with the main compound lifts like the squat, bench, or deadlift. But with BFR bands, you can reach similar results with only 20% of the intensity by going closer to failure. This makes BFR training very effective for supporting muscle growth and strength in the elderly who can't lift heavy weights. There are a lot of studies showing that. However, studies on well-trained athletes have also shown that BFR training is good for promoting muscle mass and strength. In fact, a 2014 study on rugby players found that using BFR training 3 times a week yielded greater strength gains compared to only regular weightlifting at 70% of 1 rep max. So combining BFR training with regular weightlifting might be actually superior than just weightlifting alone. This probably has to do with the increased recovery effect and reduced muscle damage. Because of that, you can also train more frequently with BFR training. You don't need like several days to recover from the strength training with traditional weights. Blood flow restriction training was pioneered by a Japanese professor, Yoshiaki Sato, over 50 years ago. Today, Dr. Sato is in his 70s and is incredibly muscular and healthy. The only training he does is blood flow restriction training. In 1973, Dr. Sato suffered serious injuries in his ankles and knees during a skiing trip. He began using his own BFR occlusion cuffs, which he called Katsu training. Surprisingly, the ligaments healed very fast and he was able to recover. Katsu translates into additional pressure, which means that you're applying this kind of pressure to your muscles by restricting the blood flow. By now, there are over 100 peer-reviewed publications on Katsu training and even more on BFR overall. There are dozens of different kinds of blood flow restriction bands out there. Most of them are just cloth or nylon bands that you can wrap around the arms or legs. They do work in terms of restricting blood flow to the muscles. However, the Katsu bands are a complete league of their own. Not only are the bands and cuffs more comfortable and resilient, but they also have this device that automatically applies pressure to the bands to restrict the blood flow. So they're like the cycles of pressure on and pressure off that acts like a pump. This way you can stimulate lifting weights without actually lifting anything. The pressure goes around the limbs, which makes the blood pool up in the muscle, causing cell swelling and stimulating protein synthesis. And when the pressure goes off, it releases this surge of blood through the blood vessels, which mimics movement. Now, it is recommended to first allow the Katsu cycles to apply the pressure to the bands and then do some form of exercise. But you can still do the just cycles themselves without lifting anything and still get some benefits. I could be sitting on a couch or typing on a keyboard while the Katsu cycles are putting on the pressure to my muscles. That's why the Katsu bands are so good, and I'm happy to also be a licensed Katsu instructor. Yes, the Katsu bands are significantly more expensive than regular BFR bands, but the regular BFR bands don't have the Katsu pressure cycles on and off that you can apply. They just have a nylon band, of course. If you just have a nylon band, then it's gonna be very cheap. But you're not gonna get this device that actually just automatically pumps the blood and pumps the pressure on and off. That's why Katsu bands are 3 to 5 times better than regular BFR bands. And I've got an exclusive discount code that you can't get from anywhere else. Head over to katsu.com and use the code SEAM for a 10% discount. BFR is considered to be safe for all ages and genders. Injuries are generally very rare, but if you apply the bands too tightly, you might cause some numbness and other problems. The research has found that the optimal pressure is around 40 to 60%. A medical tourniquet that you would put on to prevent bleeding to death is 100% occlusion. But BFR is only 40 to 60%. Which is why it's called blood flow restriction training, not complete occlusion. Overall, I'm more optimistic about BFR than ever before, even after having done it for several years already. That's because of the recent 2023 meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials that show that you can still increase muscle strength even in the proximal muscles to the BFR bands. So in my opinion, that's like a complete game changer. If you want to know the most evidence-based methods for building muscle, then check out my recent video about this. But other than that, thanks for watching this video. Make sure to click the like and subscribe for future videos about living longer and staying healthier. My name is Siim. Stay optimized, stay empowered.